So, welcome everyone. Thank you for being a part of Iron Galaxy's Press Start initiative. We're going to press start on your career in games with Iron Galaxy. We have a fantastic panel of people here, and I can't wait for you to all meet them and to see what we're going to do today. So, first things first, today's agenda, we're going to do some quick introductions. You'll meet Iron Galaxy. We'll have a developer panel where we'll share some important information. And of course, we'll give you some tips to help you get hired, and we'll have some question and answer time. But to kick things off, I'd like to pass it over to Rejess for a quick introduction.
Thank you, Eli. My name is Rejess Marshall, and as it says, I manage our diversity, equity, inclusion, and accessibility programs here at Iron Galaxy. My favorite food is Jamaican food, specifically plantain. I have a thing for plantain. I can't help it. But my favorite game is Monopoly, and I play 2K, but I don't really like to play online. My team is more my speed. And fun fact is, I'm a DJ.
I love that. Thank you, Rejess. What's your favorite song to play these days as a DJ?
It's not safe for work.
Okay, gotcha. We'll move on. We'll move on to the next slide. Go ahead and take it away, Joe.
Yeah. Now I'm just wondering what that song is. I'm Joe Palmer. I'm an engineer here at Iron Galaxy. My favorite food are chocolate chip cookies, fat boy at heart, whatnot. Um, my favorite game. See, I gave a different answer in the chat than I gave on these slides because there's too many games. Like, you can pick one. So on here, I put Uncharted 2. In the chat, I put Streets of Rage 2. Maybe I got a thing for seconds in a 3-game series. I don't know. And fun fact, I compete in Olympic style weightlifting, and yeah, that's me.
I got it. You lift those snacks, right? That's what the
Lift
kind of
those
Olympic.
snacks.
Yeah, you were saying you love snacks. The
Is
chocolate
that
chip
some
cookie.
is that some sort of fat joke, Eli?
No,
No, I'm
never.
just
I would
kidding.
never.
I'm kidding. I'm
Let's
kidding.
move. Oh gosh. All right. Next one, bring it on over to Archie.
All right. I'm going to try to avoid any HR violations in my introduction. My name's Archie. I'm a producer here at Iron Galaxy. My favorite food is everything with bacon. If you put bacon on it, I'm all about it. My favorite game is Legacy of Kain, Soul Reaver. Just the writing, the story, everything. Chef's kiss. And fun fact, I've appeared in a few TV shows as an extra. So NBC shot a couple of Chicago shows. So I've been in Chicago Fire, Boss, Playboy Club pilot when they made that. So yeah, that's me.
I love that. I also love that you and Joe both have a through line of Amy Hennig in your games, because
Oh
Amy
yeah,
Hennig was the director of Legacy of Kain Soul Reaver, and then also was a part of Uncharted. So there's a lot of Amy Hennig love here
big
right
fan
now.
of Amy Hennig.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so good. And then last up, my name's Eli. I am the recruiter at Iron Galaxy. My favorite food is Hawaiian barbecue, usually, or tacos. I'm not too picky. Basically, if it's a meat and it has some kind of sauce on it, I'm pretty happy. Like bulgogi, huge fan. My favorite game of all time is Super Mario RPG. It is the best. I can't get enough of it. And fun fact, I worked on an indie game, and it started Jerk Cloud, who was trying to ruin everyone's day. It was a fun little project. But now that you have, met the people you're going to talk with today, or that are going to share some knowledge with you today, I think it's really important for you to meet and learn a little bit of Iron Galaxy. So, who is Iron Galaxy? Well, I'll tell you, we're one of the world's largest independent game developers. We have 60 plus ship titles, 20 plus partners, and we have grown to over 260 team members in our 14 years, almost 15 years now of existence. And our teams, we make great games in Chicago, Illinois, Orlando, Florida, Nashville, Tennessee, and coming soon, Austin, Texas as well. So that's where we are. And those are the things that we do. But why would you want to work at Iron Galaxy, right? So I think if you've been following the news lately, gaming has a rightly earned bad reputation when it comes to work-life balance, the being burnt out, the overloaded. Also on the stability side, the recent headlines with a crazy amount of layoffs in tech, right? So I think Iron Galaxy has two really good answers for these huge problems in tech and in gaming. First off, the stability side of the coin. We've had zero layoffs in 14 years. That's by design. That's because of our business model. 32 of our team members here have been at Iron Galaxy for over 10 years. That's knowledge, that's experience. A lot of that stability comes from that. We work on about 5 to 10 to 5 to 8 games in a calendar year. And honestly, When you have so much variety as things come on and off, you're able to support everyone and keep growing and keep hiring as a company. And that variety is a huge thing, I think, to our enjoyment as a company, having a hand in some of the biggest franchises. So that project and partner variety, I think, is a key to our stability. But you can't really have a good work-life balance, the other side of the coin, without that stability. So I'm happy to tell you, we ask our employees to do their best 8 hours a day to equal their 40-hour work week. We have generous PTO, vacation, sick days, mental health days. There's a ton of it. Entry level folks are getting like 36 days plus. It's crazy. You have flexible start times. We have inclusive benefits for birthing and non birthing parents. We have hybrid options as well. So I would tell you that when it comes to some of the biggest questions in gaming, and if you're going to want to work somewhere long term, I think Iron Galaxy has great answers. I would never tell you that we're perfect, but we are open to feedback, hearing from our employees, and continuing to grow and get better. I think the things you see on websites, it can be bullet points that are, sometimes can feel like placations. I tell you, at Iron Galaxy, I have never felt that way in my 2 years with the company, and I truly, truly think it's a great place to work. But if you don't believe me, you can check out our many accolades that we've won from our local regions and all the other places that we do business. What's great, if you really want to learn more about us, you can scan this QR code on the screen. You'll go to our built-in page. It has a full deep dive on our benefits and our DEIA efforts. And one of the awards we won through gamesindustry.biz, we were one of 3 large game companies. So over 250 employees put you in the large game category. And we were one of 3 in all of games to get a Best Place to Work award in 2022, and 90% of your staff or more has to say that it's a great place to work, or that it gets a favorable thumbs up from them for you to receive that award. In one of 3 in gaming, it's pretty great to me. So those are our accolades. But let's talk about our games, because of course, if you're here, I saw you in the chat talking about God of War and Persona and all this. You maybe want to know the kind of things that Iron Galaxy works on. So we are known for ports, remasters, co-development, support work, and of course, full game development. Let's take a look at some of those titles you might know. Our port projects including Spyro, Crash, Skyrim, oh man, Street Fighter, Borderlands, Batman, and of course porting Uncharted 4 recently to PC for Sony. Huge fan of that. Actually, I'm sure we're going to have some more details on that maybe here in just a little bit. If you look at our support work, it's things like Destiny, Fallout, Bioshock, Overwatch, Diablo, and the recently released Metroid Prime Remaster. Big fan of those games. Let's talk about some of our co-development here. Oh, wait. Got it. Does anyone have a different slide? Can I show? No, I'm getting word that I cannot show. Most of our co-dev projects are under NDA. They're under wraps, and I do not want to get fired. So let's move on. And of course, we do full game development as a company too. We've got Killer Instinct, Rumbleverse, Racketeer, Divekick, and Extinction, all projects that we're extremely proud of, and we love these games, and we love making great games. So that's the company, and now it's time for you to hear a little bit from our wonderful, wonderful panelists here. And I think I'm just going to kick things off with some questions here and stop my screen share. And I'm going to kick it to you first, Joe, if you don't mind starting off. What was your path into games, since you're the person in the room with the longest tenure in Iron Galaxy?
It was pretty straightforward. I started mixing around with computers when I was in middle school. And so I went to a magnet high school that offered programming. And one day in class, they were like, hey, make a career plan for something you want to do. And I started looking up like who makes video games and how it's done, and put together a little career plan or whatever. I do not have that career plan. I don't know if I actually followed it. But I did end up studying computer science at Morgan State University. And then, instead of going the defense route, which is what a lot of my classmates were doing, I decided I want to do something different. And then I applied to FIA, the University of Central Florida's game development graduate program. And I got in there, went through I think it's like 16-month intense kind of game development program. And I got my first job not long after that, working at a company in California. And I think I'm going to say 8 months after that, a friend of mine who is a tech director here now, and I went to grad school with, I was coming to Chicago. He's like, hey, do you want to meet up with Dave? This was back when the company was small enough that you could just like walk in and just be like, hey, Dave. You could just like talk to Dave Lang. He's like, you want to meet with Dave? And I was like, yeah, sure. And he's like, you want to talk to Dave about a job? I was like, okay. It's like, do you want to just interview? And I was like, all right, that escalated quickly. And that's kind of how I ended up in Iron Galaxy.
So one, I was going to say, I don't know if FIA sponsored this session. I'm, no free ads is kind of where I'm at with it. But also that
I
that's a
mean,
really we have a lot of FIA students here at Iron Galaxy. It's a studio, or sorry, a school that's right next to our Orlando studio. So we get a lot of folks from there. But I guess that's kind of your journey, Joe. To me, it seems like it was something where you were almost asked to be a game dev, right? So I think that's a lot of the opposite of people's experience, right? Or you were kind of, your friend helped you out. He was just like, hey, do you want to do this thing?
well, no, I mean, my first job wasn't at Iron Galaxy. So
Yeah, of
I
course, of
mean,
course.
I decided I wanted to be a game dev because I like games and I figured somebody has to make them, right? And so I was already programming. And so I just kind of looked it up and was like, programmers make video games. I was like, yeah, I'm gonna do that. And to be honest, I had forgotten about it when I went to college. Like I had made that plan in high school for an assignment. I went to college, studied computer science, and I wasn't thinking about making games. But when it was time to graduate, it was like, well, what are my options? And my options didn't seem particularly interesting to me. And so then it was like, well, let's go back to that thing you thought about doing and like, can you make it happen? And the answer was yes. And here I am,
Well, cheers to making it happen. Let's
right.
hear how Archie made it happen. Archie, what was your path into games?
So my path was kind of all over the place, honestly. So I was a big fan of games as a little kid. I'm not gonna say what my first system was because it'll date me. Sega Master System. I'm sorry. But yeah, I was a big fan of games as a kid, and I knew that I wanted to get into games eventually. I didn't really know that much about the industry, but I was kind of following game news when it came out, news about companies and stuff like that. And so I ended up being a fan of the industry as well. The first kind of job that I had that was in games, but not really in games, was PlayStation used to do a event at Lollapalooza where they'd have a tent and people could come by, play new games and stuff. So I was working the tent for, I want to say, a good like 5 or 6 years for Lollapalooza. And it was one of those things where it was like I had so much fun doing it, it didn't feel like work. I'm just standing around, I'm talking to people about games. There was no pressure to sell anything or anything like that. We're just demoing games to people. And I had a great time. And I was like, I definitely want to go into games now. And my then girlfriend, now current wife, convinced me to go back to school for gaming. I went to school for the Illinois Institute of Art I got a degree in game art design. And then I got a couple of jobs after I left school. Eventually interviewed at Wargaming, who used to be Day One Studios. I was a big fan of Mech Assault, and they're the ones that made that. So I interviewed there, got a position there as QA, eventually moved up the QA ladder, transitioned into production. And after working there for about 8.5 years, I made the jump over to Iron Galaxy. And it's been awesome ever since then.
Awesome. Love hearing it. And then Rejess, what was your path to games?
Mine was definitely unexpected. I knew I wanted to, so I went to grad school so I could do DEI work, so diversity, equity, inclusion type work. I knew I wanted to do this. I knew I wanted to transition like my business skills into a field where I really felt like I was making impact every day. And so in the course of interviewing for other DEI roles, I found this role at Iron Galaxy, and yeah, it's been up since.
So now I kind of want to move through, and maybe we'll just start with you, Rejess, here. Is there a piece of advice that you'd give yourself back when you first started, like, pursuing a career that you can share?
Yeah, just probably like not being afraid or like trying to get over the imposter syndrome. I think when we're in spaces as underrepresented groups, it's easy to feel that imposter syndrome always, always looking around like maybe I don't belong, maybe I'm not as good, maybe I can't do this, but sometimes I just got to let that go. And I really love the support that I've gotten here. Like our manager is really cool with just like letting you try stuff. Like this is us trying stuff, right? So
Yeah.
this is us wanting to make a difference in being able to do that and just trying stuff. So letting go of all of that is probably the biggest advice I have.
I love that. I love that. And then Archie, when you first started your career in games, do you have any, advice that you'd give to someone kind of in those same shoes, or maybe advice you'd give yourself back then, that you've learned now?
Well, I mean, So things were a little intimidating, I won't lie, like when I first started, even in
Yeah.
QA, like it was just like a big deal. It was like I remember texting my friend one day and it was like, oh my God, like I'm actually at a game job now. Like I went to school for this and I'm actually at a game. Like I hate to say it, but it was almost like that old TV ad for I think Westwood College where like the kid turns to the other one, he's like, can you believe we're in a we're actually getting paid to make games? But it was one of those moments where it was just like, oh my God. And so there was a lot of intimidation. There was a lot of like, I don't want to mess this up because this is really
Yeah.
cool and I want to make sure that I do everything right. But at the end of the day, like it, I basically had to get over that fear and just approach it
Yeah.
as like a normal job because it's like I didn't want to scare myself out of the position
Yeah.
basically. So I basically had to get over that and be like, okay, this is a normal job. Just treat it like a normal job and just
Yeah.
kind of get used to everything. No one's gonna expect you to be perfect right at the beginning. It's okay. You're gonna make a couple of mistakes, but it's all right. That's how you learn.
Does that fear go away with just experience?
Yeah,
Is it just time, or
for
like is
sure.
it that self-coaching and telling yourself that?
Yeah, well, it's a little bit of both, like time and just kind of self-coaching and making yourself, making sure that you're okay and just taking time out to make sure that it's like, all right, you're gonna make some mistakes, you're gonna mess things up every once in a while, but it's all right as long as you have like decent people around you that will support you. Then
Support, yeah.
things will work out.
But there wasn't like research or like papers that you read or other stuff that you were doing to kind of make sure you were at the front of the,
Oh no,
the
no.
class. Nothing. It was just doing the job and then getting through. Okay.
Yeah, it's just a lot of a lot of the things that I picked up were just based on experience and just being there and taking good notes and making sure that I'm just trying to
Yeah.
make sure that I'm bettering myself every day.
I love it. I love that. And then Joe, to you, the same question, is there any advice that you'd give, first starting out engineer Joe, things that you've learned now as an engineer that maybe can help folks taking their first step into games?
Yeah, I guess when I first started, I always had this feeling that I wasn't as smart as the people around me. And
Mm,
that, I don't know, it's not a good feeling to have. And so like simply put, I would just say that like I would tell myself that, hey, you have value in these spaces and you should spend your time learning as much as you can, but understanding that like you are here for a reason. And it's totally fine if you don't know everything. Just absorb as much as you can, keep getting better, and you'll be fine.
that's a great message. Thank you for sharing. Is there something small right now, like in your day-to-day work, that you find yourself enjoying more than other things as an engineer at Iron Galaxy?
Um, so right now we have some stuff going on where we're like doing some research projects. We're doing like
Yeah.
we're looking into some new engines and stuff.
Yeah.
And we don't typically get to do this stuff a lot. And so
Mm,
when these kind of projects come up, they can be really enjoyable because they allow you to like do things you're not used to doing. For the
mm,
last 2 years, and the better part of the last 4 years, I've been working on Rumbleverse. So I haven't really gotten to like tinker, right? And so
gotcha.
yeah, so recently we were tinkering with some procedural generation stuff, and I just got really deep in the weeds on that stuff, and it was really fun to like figure out the little bits and pieces that I could. Because when you're doing that kind of stuff, it kind of breadcrumbs into the next thing. So you figure out one thing, and it leads to another thing, and you solve that problem, and there are like all these little micro puzzles to solve, and they're like little dopamine hits. It's really
Yeah.
nice. The first one took
I
some
get that.
time, but then you're on a roll and it's really fun. So
Cool.
just the satisfaction of solving tiny problems and how that can like snowball is really cool.
Oh no, yeah, I love marking little things off my little task list. But I was going to ask, procedural generation. Can you like just kind of give like a quick little overview of what that is, or if people have never heard the term before for a
It's
layman? Just
just the generation of content by the machine, basically. Like you give the machine
Mhm.
some rules or some a process, and it follows that process to generate content instead of like a level designer going in and making a level. A procedurally generated level would have a rule set, and you would put inputs into it, and it would generate a level for you. So you would
Yeah,
say like
dungeon crawlers, your
right,
roguelite, stuff like that.
this
Yeah.
room can only connect to this kind of room. This block can only be moved by this kind of weapon or whatever, and then it will construct a series of rooms and puzzles and things of that nature, whatever you program it to do. And that's done sometimes at runtime, sometimes at design time. Design time is like before the game is built. Runtime is like when you're actually playing the game. So you might press start on the game and it might procedurally do stuff then, or you could do it before we build out the game and put it on a disk.
Yep, cool. That's why I just wanted to dive in. Anytime there's terms, I always like to kind of flesh them out a little bit. What about you, Archie? What would you say is something you find that you're enjoying, as a producer, these days? I know, you can't always talk about the projects you're producing for, but just the things that you're finding joy in your day to day.
Well, so the main thing that gave me the most satisfaction recently was shipping my first title at IG. So as you mentioned before, we did Uncharted Legacy of Thieves Collection for PC. That was my first title at IG as a producer. And so that was the biggest thing, is just seeing the game go out, seeing the reaction from fans that have been waiting for this game to come out on PC, and just seeing the team celebrate the release and enjoy like their hard work actually going out to people. That was the biggest thing for me so far.
I love it. I love it. So to many more,
Yeah.
ship titles that
For sure.
Were you a fan of Uncharted before
Oh,
you had?
huge. That's why it was like a dream project for me too, because I've been following that studio for a long time. And yes, ever since the first Uncharted, I've played all of them at this point. Like I have all of them back there behind me on the little rack there. But yeah, it was like when they first told me like, hey, your first project's gonna be Uncharted, I was like, that's great. Like I love
Yeah.
it. Bring it on.
That's one of the things oftentimes in the hiring process where we don't say, but someone's just like, oh, I love this game. And we're just like, oh no, we're working, like, can we deploy them to that? Or, that kind of thing where if someone's really into first person shooters or MOBAs or RT, like whatever kind of action games or whatever they like, right? If we discover that that's a passion you have in our interview process, we do in some cases, if we can, try and pair you with those kind of games. And of course, it's a job and you're not always going to get your dream game project at Iron Galaxy, but Archie, you're a case where that did happen, and many people I do think get paired with games that they really are excited to work on here.
Sure.
So it's one of those cool things that I think about the studio. But speaking about other cool things, Rejess, you've been in games. This is a new field for you. What are you liking so far about the industry?
There's quite a few things. One, I came from like insurance, so this is like a totally different world, and we have a lot more fun. I never have to dress up, like ever. So that is also probably my favorite. What else I like about it? It's video games, y'all. It's like that's probably the coolest thing is it's video games, and because of my role, I'm not on a project, so sometimes I get to like sneak and look at all the projects or get invited to play test. That's one of my favorite things to do is sneak my way into a play test invite.
Oh man, that's so great because one, no free ads once again, but me and Rejess both worked at Progressive before we were in the games industry. So that's a thing. We got to go have Flo tour our campuses, and there was like a whole wedding like thing set up. You could take pictures with the cardboard. That was just a wild time, Rejess.
Wild times, man. Flowbron.
Oh no, the worst. Okay, so and I'm saying that as a Celtics fan. That's the only reason why the Flo Brown is not for me. Okay, so we talked about things that we love about our jobs, about the industry, and all of that, right? But of course, the other side of that coin would be things that could, use some improvement. So I want to start with Joe. Joe, what do you think that we can do better as an industry?
No industry is perfect, but games has its own particular challenges. One of the things I've noticed, and I've been on the like hiring team for Iron Galaxy for some years. I don't do as much of it now, but in the past I've been like on lots of interviews. And one of the things I've noticed just about games in general is that there's a lot of like industry cannibalism, if you can think about it. Don't think bloody, think like stealing from other, I guess we should call it industry theft. Cannibalism is not a great word.
Yeah.
But basically, you want to increase the diversity of your company. And so, but you also have this habit of only pursuing candidates who have previous games experience. So that means when you hire somebody who's diverse, you're really pulling diversity from another company. So it's like
Yeah.
the industry itself is not becoming more diverse. Your company is, which is great. It's great that you have a great company that, you know, diverse candidates want to come to and they feel
Mhm.
good about being at. But there's also a degree to which like we can't grow this industry in a diverse way if we don't reach outside of it.
Yeah.
And so I think that's like a major shortcoming of games. It's just like a major distrust of like, especially technical individuals from who don't come from a games background. And I think we could, if we really tried, we could get past that. But I think there's a fear element of like getting a bad candidate or something like that.
No, no, I totally hear you there, and I would say that you know, Iron Galaxy's kind of commitment to diversity, equity, inclusion, accessibility, you know, all of that. Events like this is us kind of keeping that promise too. But Rejess, is there something that you, now that you've dove in with your DEIA lens, is there something that you think that the industry can do better?
Yeah, totally like what Joe said. I think just creating more opportunities, right? Um,
Mm.
taking a risk on somebody, right? So seeing past some of the technical skills and figuring out what can you teach versus what, you know, someone really has to have coming into it, and how much you're willing to invest into someone's career,
Mm.
and creating, you know, that diverse workforce that you want. Um, let's see, what else? Did you ask me that or no?
Yeah,
Am I good?
just things that you think that the industry can do better, and I think that yeah, those are all things. And you know, Archie, I also want to send it over to you. Besides making an Uncharted 5 game, what can the industry do better, right?
Well, I think one of the things that I think that the industry could definitely improve on right now is crunch, because that's
Mm.
been definitely like a major news thing over the past few years of like companies that have been,
Mm-hmm.
you know, doing crunch and stuff like that. So just planning things out better. I think back in the day, it used to be where like, you know, you had this firm release date and you had to hit it. So like companies would crunch. But I think now we're starting to see a lot of the side effects of that of like, well, you know, sure, you hit your release date, but when the game comes out, you know, it's not ready. You know, fans are upset
Mm-hmm.
because, you know, things are missing or features are missing or the performance isn't where they think it should be. And so I think people as a just the general audience is getting more receptive to like, okay, if you guys need more time, delay the game. We'll wait. We'll be here.
Yeah,
Just we want
yeah,
a
yeah.
decent game to come out. We don't want to, you know, we'd rather have a playable game come out at this date versus, you know, something broken come out, you know, too early.
So, one, thank you for teeing me up so well about Iron Galaxy's people value and being work-life balance focused. You know, and I would never tell you or never claim that there's not times at Iron Galaxy that it's more busy, and that no one here has ever done over 40 hours, right? But the main thing for us is we ask you for your best 8 hours a day to equal your 40-hour work week, and it's really, you know, a commitment from leadership that that's the goal for everyone every week, right? And you know, like I said earlier, we know we're not perfect and we can always get better, but that's the mission, and that's kind of one of the promises that leadership has to our staff. So really, again, thrilled to work at a place that kind of has that as a focus. And one thing that we have been focusing on since we hired Rejess about 2 years ago is all of our DEI impacts that we have across the board with our ERGs and other things that we're invested in. But Rejess, is there any specific thing you'd call out that you think that we've had an impact as a company, you know, on the diversity side, or any things that you think we're doing good?
Yeah, I mean, one, the willingness to have the conversation, I think since day one has been there. So I think there's known things in the DEIA world where like practitioners move around because companies don't really mean what they say, and they're not
Mm,
willing
mm.
to invest resources into the efforts. So I think that's first, is just kind of meaning what you say. I think the one thing that we did immediately change were some of our hiring practices. I mean, so we work really closely to make sure that our hiring practices are as unbiased and inclusive as possible, from the way we search for people on LinkedIn to making sure that we have someone femme presenting on all of our interviews if possible. So making sure that when people come interview with us, they feel safe, right? And they feel like they can interview in a safe space, which will result in the best interview possible. Uh, Anonymizing tests we've done. So
Mm.
yeah, the impact I think we've made in our employee resource groups for our internal employees has been really fun as well. Just that consistent programming. I think when I got here, you know, we didn't have consistent programming for Affinity Month, so not celebrating Black History Month or Women's History Month consistently or with robust programming. So adding that to the employees day to day, I think has been some of the most fun stuff.
Yeah, I fully agree. And on the hiring side, it's great that our initial interviews are over the phone, so we can't have any bias for anyone. And Rejess, when you were talking about the way that we reach out to candidates, yeah, it's definitely a thing where the photos are blurred out, the names are blurred out. We can't make an assumption about you when we're like pulling talent. It is based off of experience, but I do think the industry can improve on giving pathways for people from underrepresented communities to gain that experience too. Because again, a lot of the times I am looking at has this experience, can do this thing, right? And there's certain bars to clear, but ultimately, we have to, I think, do better at building those pathways for people to get that experience or gain that experience through mentorships, through apprenticeships, and things like that. So we've grown a ton as a company over the last few years. I think maybe from in the last 2 to 3 years, from about 125 to over 260 now. I mean, over maybe even over 270 now, but it's something where we are keeping that in our mind and being mindful of that. That we want to have diverse hiring practices so that we can have games made by a group that is like the people that play them. Very diverse with a lot of different backgrounds. So my next question, I kind of wanted to jump into. Starting to trend towards the hiring stuff that we're going to be talking about today. Archie, do you think that there's like a key skill or like a few skills that every producer should have?
Well, for production, I think the most key skill is to be able to listen and to be able to get feedback and be able to deliver it to the team effectively. So much of your job is wrapped up in trying to make sure that your team can be as effective as they can at any given moment. So whether that's getting technical issues removed so that they can work more efficiently, or getting talking to somebody to make sure that the project can move smoothly and be on time. Like so much of the job is focused on just making sure that people can do the job that they need to do so that the game can release on time. And so being able to listen is like the most important skill that you can have as a producer.
And I know you partner with other departments too. Is there any other advice that you have for art, design, any of those other disciplines that you regularly are communicating with?
So for those specific departments, or
Yeah. For any skills that you think like when you're working with an artist, you're like, oh, that's a skill that is great that they're communicating with me on.
so I think the best thing to do is to learn a little bit about each discipline. So you're never going to be the expert of everything, but just having some background and having some knowledge of each individual discipline will help you a lot. So like you don't have to, if you want to be a producer, you don't have to, study art or, be an artist yourself, but,
Yeah.
just know enough to be able to communicate with those guys and be able to listen to them and know any problems that they're facing and be able to relate those to other people is one of the most important skills. So you have to be a little bit of a
Awesome.
jack of all trades.
Yeah, I like that. I like that. Yeah, no. I am a master of none, no trades. That's what I am. Joe. So we were kind of talking about ways that producers can maybe have skills or some things that they can focus on. I know engineering is pretty vast, right? There's a lot of different parts of engineering. Can you speak to a little bit of the specializations within an engineering team and how those function?
Yeah, there it is vast. You're not wrong. That's why I think that's part of the reason why at Iron Galaxy we tend to want people to come in as generalists, just because
Mm.
um, it means you're flexible in a way that like really helps Iron Galaxy as an organization kind of stay agile.
Mm.
But I would be lying if I said engineers here didn't like end up with specialization. So like for the past 5 years, I've been working on UI, which is user interface stuff.
Mhm.
That's like your HUDs, your menus, things of that nature. And I've also worked in gameplay, which is like, I often describe it as like what the player is doing. So like if the player is, doing combos, or if they're, platforming, or if they're, firing a gun, anything related to like what the player does in the game is gameplay. But there's also other stuff that's, even more specialized. The gameplay is kind of all encompassing. It's like it's a very wide net. But there are systems engineers who just work on backend systems of the game, and the things that you don't see are oftentimes run by systems on the back end of the game.
Mm.
There's rendering, which is like how the game looks, how it's drawn on the screen. There's build engineering, which is just the build engineer's job is just to make sure that there's a working build of the game and whatever platforms we need, and that we can at any time get a working build of the game going. But you'd be surprised how complex that is, like with all the different ways you can make builds, all the different technologies involved in packaging a build and making sure that it functions properly. Like you could spend all day, 40 hours a week just doing that. Let me think, what else is audio? There's audio engineering for the sound of the game. There's, let me think. I'm blanking on other ones, but there are more than I said. There are way too many to, animation engineering. See, that just popped in my head. Yeah, there's a lot of stuff to do on the engineering side.
Awesome. So I think engineering is an excellent career to invest in because there's so many options. And I would say, there's a few resources that I can share with the group, but essentially, I believe 33% of all open game dev roles are in engineering, with every other discipline being lower. And this is based off of like a sheet that aggregates all the jobs and kind of gives you percentages. So lots of different fields for engineers to go down. So I saw a few questions in chat about where you can put your questions. So we did get some ahead of time, but you'll see the Q&A here on Zoom. If you want to click into there and put your questions in the Q&A below on the bottom little menu screen between participants and screen share, you should all have a Q&A there. And if you want to start putting in some questions there, we can definitely get to that. Last little bits before we jump to the Q&A are going to be just some advice and help to get hired. So if you wouldn't mind, Archie, starting out, do you have any resources that you think producers can use to either level up as a producer or to help them get hired?
Sure, wasn't muted. Yeah, so there's a lot of resources online. I found a lot of those when I was first starting out. If you just Google search, being a producer in the games industry, there's a lot of resources, a lot of videos. I have I have a link for one of them that's really good that goes over just like a basic overview of what a producer does and like the roles and like how important communication is and basically a lot of things that I was saying. It kind of goes over those in detail. But there's just a ton of resources online if you're looking to get started in production and kind of see how things work. I think we lost your audio, Eli. You might be muted. Looks like you're muted too.
I have been unmuted.
There
I have
you go.
been permitted to talk. I love it. Yeah, I was just going to say thank you for sharing. And in fact, if you have that link, go ahead and send it to me. And I'll throw up a slide with my contact information later, and anyone can reach out and I can forward you that video. And Joe, do you also have any different advice or resources that you think people can invest in to grow as an engineer?
Yeah, sure. I would say, I guess making sure you're familiar with C++ is probably the best thing I could tell you. It's the language used the most often in games. That doesn't mean that games aren't using other languages, but it is kind of their bread and butter. And just making sure you're up on your programming concepts is another thing. An underrated I guess piece of advice is just to make games. Like a lot of people feel like now it's a little bit easier. You get Unreal and you can just go make an Unreal game, or you can get Unity. But you'd be surprised how many people want to make games but aren't actually making them. And like you can make a small game, you can make a text game, you can make a board game, you can make a paper prototype. Like if you're making games, then you're doing yourself a favor and helping build up the skills you'll need to get hired. Like whether that is design or art or programming, get together with some friends, form a group, find a group online, and make something. Because when you don't have any experience, the things you make become your experience, right? So like you can then go into a room and say like, hey, I haven't worked before, but these are the things that I've done in my spare time. I've been working on this prototype to do this. I've been working on a game that does that. And then you can speak intelligently to the things that you've been learning and doing. And that's always good.
Awesome. Yeah, I think I'm always an advocate for game jams too, because that gets you like working with people in cross-discipline, like artists and designers and different things like that. If you're an engineer, I'm always an advocate for game jams too. I think that those are awesome. And just some quick advice from a recruiter that I would share here. I think that the biggest thing that I can tell you are these 2 points here on the slide, that you should apply for the job on the official company website, because if you're going to an aggregating website, there may be key details you're missing about the role that you're not going to notice or understand to include in your cover letter, or you might just miss a key element of the location or what's required, right? So I always say go to the official company website and apply on their website there. And then the biggest thing when it comes to interviews, I think 2-3 weeks later, let's say you do a great interview and then you don't hear back, and then you get a rejection for maybe 4 weeks later. And I think that it's really important that you ask for your feedback at the end of the interview. If someone says, do you have any final questions, I think that you should ask, do you have any feedback for me on this interview? Because you're going to want that feedback, right? But if you wait till 3 weeks later where you maybe don't get the job, or when the interviewer who talked with you maybe doesn't have the fresh context on what they think that maybe you could improve on, I think that wait time is going to do a disservice to you. So I would say don't wait for a follow-up email. Ask before you wrap up the call. And then I just wanted to share one good interview question with you here. And basically, I think this is for your interviews with leads, managers, and senior team members. And it's basically, do you have any concerns about me in this role? Because I think two things can happen from this question. Either one, you'll have an experience to draw on that can smooth over that, concern, right? They could say, this is a concern that I have about you being able to do this job. And then you can say, oh, great. Well, I have an example that I can tell you of when I handled that exact situation, right? Or you're going to discover what the thing you need to work on is to get that next job. So I think it's really important that you ask, do you have any concerns about me in this role? And this is not my question. This is a question that a hiring manager told me that they loved. And when someone asked it to them, they were so excited. They were like, they asked my favorite interview question. So this is one that I think people really enjoy. And just some quick advice from a recruiter. But like I said, I wanted to share my contact information. So if anyone here wants to apply, there is a QR link here, and you can click that open and you can apply, but also our recruiters are available to you. In fact, the recruiters at your favorite companies, if you want to work there and their contact is public, please reach out to them, because that's their job. They want to help you get hired, right? So you can email and reach out to us on LinkedIn. Those are our members of our recruiting team there, and you can always check out our jobs on irongalaxy.com/careers. And so now we're going to just head on into the Q&A. So I know that there were some questions that we had in chat and then that we got beforehand. But yeah, if you want to click that Q&A and just throw some of your questions into there, I'd love to see them. Yeah, one that I'm seeing first here that's just popping up is just, what about asking for feedback from a rejection email? That's why I think you should ask on the call. I don't think you should wait until you get the rejection, because that person, let's say they interviewed 7 people, 10, 20 people, they might not have the context to give you accurate or adequate feedback so you can level up and understand maybe what to work on in the future. So I'd say this applies to any interview that I think you can have in any tech field, or any field actually. Just ask at the end of the call, do you have any feedback for me on this interview? And then maybe you can find out what they're looking for. And then let's go to some of these questions here. And if you have them, please put them into the Q&A. And some of the ones that we got beforehand, I'll just dive into right now. Let's see here. The question that we got beforehand is, if I have lead experience from another industry, should I put that on my resume if I am looking for an entry-level position? I think any experience is experience. You should definitely put that on there. Joe, you're nodding your head, so go ahead, take it away if you want to take this one.
I mean, so there are two things. Like, you may be new to the industry, and that is, obviously there's a learning curve there. You come to a new industry, you have to learn some stuff, but there are things that are that carry over about being in a leadership role, being in a mentoring role, that are somewhat, industry agnostic, right? It doesn't matter what you've been doing. If you've been able to effectively communicate feedback, if you've been effectively able to take feedback, if you've been able to coach people up, and on different concepts. Like those are all things that will speak to your ability to grow into a leadership role in the future. So like, if you and another candidate are looking the same, but you have some lead experience, and we know that at some point you could grow into a lead, that gives you an edge over that other person. So like any experience that you have that could speak to your ability to grow or even show some abilities outside of like the, I guess, technical parts of the job you're applying for, like I think if it's potentially relevant, you should let people know about it.
Oh, I fully agree. I mean, even stuff like, being a part of the Eagle Scouts or any of that stuff that shows that, that you might have been, achieving something. I mean, even like Coursera courses or like Udemy certifications, any of that stuff, I think is relevant. Anything that can get you that extra 2% that helps you land that job, I think is relevant and important. There was another question that we got ahead of time that was, how can I get someone in the industry to review my portfolio and become a mentor? And I think that one, hey, hit up a recruiter, me, Eli at Iron Galaxy. I'd love to connect you with someone if I can, have a little coffee chat and things like that with one of our artists potentially. But yeah, I think it is having that confidence to reach out to either recruiters or artists at different places and seeing if there's anyone that can help you. There's also, Discords or Reddit threads where you can kind of like, collaborate with people and potentially get other support and help as well. So those are some things that I'd kind of maybe take a look at. And I'm diving into Q.
I was
Oh,
going
go
to
ahead.
bring up another one actually. GDC and SIGGRAPH, those trade industry events usually have sections set aside for portfolio reviews and stuff like that too. So if you're able to go to one of those, I highly suggest doing that because you can get portfolio reviews there. Like they have a whole section just dedicated to that where you can, get some feedback on your portfolio.
Definitely,
Shoot y'all
definitely.
shot, man. Shoot your shot. I shoot my shot every week on LinkedIn, and some people answer and some people don't. But I've gotten some really cool informational interviews with some really cool people. So don't be afraid to get left on red. It's okay.
Gotcha. I don't leave people on red, Rejess. One of Iron Galaxy's
Eli
pillars
does not.
one of our pillars of our recruiting team is we never ghost anyone. I actually put that like on a slide that we never ghost anyone. I put the little like ghost emoji, and then our boss was like, "What is this? What is happening here?" So that was really great. Okay, so one of the questions we had from Anonymous in the old chat there was, what are the most common troubles or difficulties you face at your job, or getting a job? So, do you face any common troubles, Rejess?
I mean, no, I think, right, we balance a lot of different things, especially in my role. So making sure to give everything its appropriate time, making sure projects are moving along. So I'm pretty sure maybe Archie could understand, but yeah, just balancing everything is usually the common problem because you want to do everything and make it all great, but you only have but so much time and resources.
I have someone asking, Rejess, I'll stay with you here. Does Iron Galaxy have any apprenticeships? I'm in Memphis and I'm looking for a UI position and apprenticeships.
So we don't have any external ones. We have internships. And so, yeah, you can kind of get in on our internship cycle, which is mainly with our program department. Every now and again, we might slip one out for art and design.
Yeah.
So we definitely have internships. We do have internal type apprenticeships. So we do offer something like that for our internal folks who are already working at IG. So let's say, like Archie said, he worked his way up kind of through QA. So sometimes we have people in QA who want to work in another department. So we allow them an apprenticeship or like a mentorship so that they can learn and go visit another department for a little bit of time and then hopefully then get hired and move to that department. So we do that pretty, I won't say like a lot, but we do it pretty regularly.
Does anyone on the panel have any thoughts for what type of roles a video editor could do within the games industry?
I mean, games are marketed, right? So, and they're often marketed with like teaser trailers and, there's all kinds of social media. Like I was kind of blown away at all the social media stuff they were doing with Rumbleverse. Like it was a lot. So all that stuff has to be cut. It has to be captured. It has to be, it has to be edited and things of that nature. So like if there's a marketing department, if there's a social media team, I would be looking in those places because those people, half of what they, maybe not half, but a decent amount of what they do is producing video content to put on the internet for people to consume so that they know about games. So that is the place I would be looking if I were a video editor or some kind of video creator.
I
Perfect.
can actually speak to this too because I actually did video editing at my at Wargaming when I was there too. So yeah, I worked for the publishing department for a little bit and did some video editing. We did dev diaries where I'd interview members of the development team, and then we put together a video showing like the new things that were getting added to the game. For trailers, release trailers for new content and stuff like that. There was always a need for some of that, just like how Joe said. And yeah, just events and stuff like that. We did like a thank you videos to the fans and stuff like that. So there's always, different opportunities depending on what your skill set is, in the games industry. Like you may not necessarily be on the dev team, but you're still, a part of the games industry and you can still contribute.
Truly, you can. Everyone can contribute. Games are a huge team sport, and there is a ridiculous amount of people that work on them to get them out the door. And any game being shipped ever is a miracle, in my opinion.
That's true.
Eli, since you said that it's a team sport, I do see a question here that says, in my previous position, I was a part of operations team in a different industry, and I was thinking about doing an operations position for games, but also I have experience with programming as well. Would you say to have multiple portfolios for each or only one?
I would split it up. I would have one for each because I think a lot of the times when someone applies and maybe they have multiple skill sets, we don't necessarily know which one you might want to do long term. And sometimes, it's like, oh, hey, I just want to get in the door with this role, but really this is the thing I truly want to do in 2 years' time, and I maybe want to transition, right? So I would say have a dedicated resume and portfolio for each individually, if you can, if you have the time, and if it's something that you truly want, you'll put in the time and effort to, land the gig, right? So for me, I think you should have individual resumes, not highlighting too much, but also those other things that you bring to the table from those other disciplines or those other things that you're doing. Those can be things that you highlight in your cover letter that make you a great team member or that make you a great problem solver. You can always weave the narrative of how your skills and experience tie to the bullet points on someone's job post. And those are some maybe secret spicy things that you can toss in the interview, right? So yeah, all of that experience that you have matters, but I would say have a dedicated resume specifically for each role because many job applications are going to have hundreds of applicants, especially within games, and you want to make sure that your resume is clear, concise, and shows how your skills can translate to the role they're trying to hire for. I think I'll jump to the next question to just ask everyone here. Finding a job is full of rejections and tough times. How do you find your balance while still hunting down that first games industry job? And I'd like to kind of pair this with that imposter side of things, getting those rejections, all of that. So I think this is a good kind of a good point to kind of just talk about, imposter syndrome in general and having to deal with all that rejections. Am I good enough for these roles, or do I have the experience?
I guess I'll start out. So imposter syndrome is one thing. Like the job thing is, that's tough. It can feel bad to like apply to places and not get responses. It can feel bad to like apply places, take tests, and then fail them. Part of it is just that, you only need one yes, right? You need one person to say yes, and then you're in the door. And once you're in the games industry, it's notoriously easier to move throughout the games industry, like we talked about, like for better or for worse, that is the case. So to that, I would just say, you need to be persistent, have a short memory, and just kind of like, once something is done, you just leave it where it is and move on to the next thing. And if you can get that feedback and take it seriously. Try to continue to improve the offering that you have that you're bringing to people. But then the imposter syndrome of it all is like something that even when you get your first job, it's not gonna go away. It's gonna be there. It's like, it's like that devil on the shoulder or whatever. And to that, I would say is like when you start feeling that imposter syndrome, like a lot of times what I found is like when I feel that way, it's a sign that like I'm butting up against the edge of my skills. But when you butt up against the edge of your skills, you're not really failing so much as you're growing. And growth is like how we all get better at what we do. So if you're not good enough right now, you're feeling down on yourself, you need to remember that like this is an opportunity for you to kind of get better at what you're doing, to learn something new, and not beat up on yourself about it, but like take it as an opportunity. Like, so yeah, that's kind of how I think about imposter syndrome. Like I said, I'm 11 years, 12 years into the industry. It doesn't go away. It's going to be there. So you kind of have to like learn how to deal with it, how to talk yourself out of it, and kind of how to turn it to your own advantage. So yeah.
I'll go
I like
next. Quick, I'd say one, it's okay to take a break. So I know like in the midst of my job hunt, it got so overwhelming, like you said, you get tired of hearing all the rejections, take a break. It's okay. There'll be jobs when you get back to it. So maybe take a breather for a week or two, whatever you need, to kind of approach it, with a more positive mindset. And then that's the second one, is just have a positive mindset. I just started trying to find ways that I had access to do what I loved, or do what it is I wanted to do, or make the impact I wanted to make. So like Joe said earlier, just go make a game. Like if you want to make games, you can make a game for yourself, or find a group of people to make games with. And then that eventually will, lead to that dream job and that role that you're looking for.
That's awesome
Archie,
advice. I was
yeah, I
gonna
was gonna say,
say,
Archie, do you have something? Yeah.
yeah. So initially, when I started interviewing, like I completely bombed my first game industry interview. But that being said, and I was depressed at the time. I was like, man, this was my first shot, and I kind of like, I don't think it went well. But looking back on it, even though I didn't get the position, I learned so much from that initial interview. Like, just knowing what to expect, what kind of questions that, could potentially get thrown at me. They plopped me in front of a PC and basically said, like, all right, find all the bugs in this game. And I was overwhelmed. I didn't know what was going on. I was super nervous. And so, just having that initial experience and getting that out of the way, I think prepared me for all the ones after that. So like, although, it didn't go well, I still look back on it and say, I'm grateful that it happened, because I was able to learn from that and apply those things to all the other subsequent positions until I actually did get a role. So
I feel that pain, Archie. I had an interview process. I interviewed somewhere 8 times. They flew me out, all the stuff, and then somehow didn't get it. That's that thing where you're just like, yo, like, what is my life? Am I ever going to do this? Will I ever be good enough? And you get knocked down 11 times, you get up 12 times. Like, guess what? I'm back. It's me. Like, yeah, you just got to do it. I love it.
Yeah, that's the tough one, when you get flued out.
Yeah.
Man. I'm not even
like,
gonna go. I got flued out and
in.
got ghosted once, but
yeah, it's like, dude, did I smell bad? Like, what's going on? Like, did they hate my sweater? Like, yeah. Okay, so there was a question from an anonymous about recent graduates. Basically, for recent graduates, would you give what advice would you give when applying for jobs that require X amount of years of experience? So one quick thing I'll just share, because I know that that's kind of a common thing, right? A lot of these jobs are entry-level roles and they ask you to have so many years of experience. I think a thing that you can do is give context to the skills that you do have, right? Rather than just listing C++ or Unreal Engine or Unity, right? You can put how many years of experience you have in that. And even though it's not necessarily, professional experience, just having familiarity with that system or with that structure, I think is helpful for hiring managers to crack that door open for a fit for you, right? It's like, oh wow, this person, even though they haven't had any game dev, let's say professional jobs yet, they've been working in Unreal for 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, 2.5 years, whatever that is. So I think that is helpful. Does anyone else on the panel have any info, anything you can share about applying for those jobs that require X years of experience?
Apply anyway.
Yeah.
Like, just apply.
A job rec is like a wish list, right? It's like,
yeah,
the ideal candidate has X, Y, Z, 1, 2, 3, ABC, and sometimes you find a candidate who doesn't have those things but has other things. They might not have the experience, but they're creative in a way that you haven't seen on an interview, or they have soft skills that you think could really help your organization or whatever. And so if you think you have something to offer and you think you can do the job, and by all means, just apply. The worst that they can say is no. If you say no to yourself, you're just doing the work for them. Like, you might as well just apply. Be realistic. Be realistic.
There
But
are no rules. Okay. Break all the rules. No, seriously, like they would tell you like your resume has to be formatted like this and you need to have it in this kind of order. I made my own resume that matched for what I needed it to match and it worked. So like, yeah, break the rules, apply anyway. The worst they can say is no.
Yeah, piggybacking off of that, Rejess, I would tell you that I have had recruiters tell me there are multiple things on my resume that they tell people not to include on their resume. And I kept them on there because I wanted to be loud about who I was as a person. I wanted to tell my dumb little cooking joke with my little skills thing. And a big part of that was like I wanted to land at a place that was going to want to move me into the interview process because they liked what they saw on the resume, right? So, I think that when you do be your true authentic self on your resume, you are potentially going to land at a place that you'll stay more than 6 to 8 months, a place that you might enjoy working at long term. So that's why I kind of use my resume as a tool to protect myself. But I'm not applying anywhere because I'm pretty happy with where I'm at. So I don't gotta dust that thing off, and I can still have my silly little cooking joke there.
I
So I
think I
know
saw
we're
two easy ones. Can we knock
go
two
for
out
it.
real quick? Yeah.
Rock it out.
Somebody asked, do you have to sign a separate NDA per game or is there a blanket? There's a blanket one you sign when you work for the studio. And then y'all can let me know about each game. I guess each partner would determine that.
yeah, I think it's dependent on the partner. Like, I haven't signed an NDA in a long time, but I've been working on mostly original stuff. But I do know that like recently I've had we've had people had to like re-up on their NDA because the legal verbiage has changed. And so when that happens, you have to sign a new version of it. So yeah, there is a kind of a blanket one, and I assume that legal like structures that one and sends it to our partners, and they review it and okay it so that when people sign it to work here, they're covered for whatever projects or whatever. But there could be other ones. I mean, Archie would probably
Yeah.
know more about that than I would.
Yeah, I was gonna say, it's basically like you said. Like I think you sign the initial one when you start at the company, and then that covers you for all the projects. So like the lawyers and like the higher ups at the company may have to sign additional NDAs and stuff, but you're basically covered by that blanket company one that you initially signed when you first came on.
Yeah,
And
and
then,
it's
oh,
I
go
was just
ahead,
going to say
Eli.
that it's not uncommon for an interview process to ask you to sign a mutual confidentiality agreement, and it's really just to keep the terms and parameters of the test private. But yeah, it is usually just even when we have certain visitors come in, like if we have a student group coming to visit the studio, they would sign like a general NDA just to not talk about the things that they may see while they're in the studio, even though we're not going to walk them over to someone's desk and be like, look at this game we're working on that we don't tell anyone about. It's just, hey, when you're here, please keep the information private, and it doesn't have to be something huge and daunting and scary.
And then the other quick one was, do we offer remote positions? Eli.
Yes, we have hybrid options as a studio. So we would love for you to get hired in Chicago, Illinois, Nashville, Tennessee, Orlando, Florida, or Austin, Texas coming soon. I think we were remote for so long, like almost 3 years. We missed each other. We missed our awesome spaces. And it's really about us, wanting to have that creative energy in the office again. And I would tell you that our leadership teams, they're prepared to lose efficiency. They want us in office, playing table tennis or, some of our arcade machines or talking about the latest Marvel movie at the water cooler and all of that because they want it to be an environment where we're enjoying our workspace. And I would tell you that we have 2 days in office per week. Doesn't have to be the same days, doesn't have to be the same times. It's a very flexible policy. We treat people like adults at Iron Galaxy, so no one's taking like attendance for the 2 days in office that we're doing. And I'd say a lot of people are energized and excited about it. I love being in office with some of my team members and getting to, see them playing Switch and investing too much time in Monster Hunter and all this stuff. And there's been a streak of everyone eating the same pizza at the office. Every time I've been in, someone has a slice of it. So it's been a fun time, I would say. But yes, we are a hybrid company, and we would require you to have a residence in one of our studio cities.
Thanks. Okay, all yours.
Easy ones. Yeah, let's see here. I know there's quite a few questions here. Let's see.
Oh, here's an easy one. Can
Yeah.
game jams count as experience?
Yeah, you made a game.
There y'all go.
Yeah.
I mean, as long as you can speak intelligently to what you did on that project. If you're an artist or designer, you have like demos that you can show off, you have design docs or whatever. Like, as long as you have something to show for what you've done and you can speak about it intelligently, then you should consider it experience, especially like particularly if it's resulted in a game being made.
Yeah. Yeah, and actually, this next one, I kind of want to ask you, Archie, specifically because you went from QA to production. This person asked, do you have advice for career people who transition in their careers, right? In their case, they're transitioning from HR to UI UX, so the design side of things. So that's a cool transition. I love that. But yeah, what kind of advice do you have for people transitioning from one side to another?
I would say at least try to demonstrate that you can do whatever that is that you're doing. Whether
Mm.
it's like indie projects or game jams or something like that. Like at least try to make something that shows that you have an understanding of what the job will entail kind of ahead of time. Like you don't need to know everything, but like I think it goes a long way at least showing that you have the desire there, the passion there to try to do whatever it is. Like you're not just, blindly applying. You actually have something that you can demonstrate and say, hey, this is an example of something that I made. It's a small indie project or it's a small personal project, but just having that goes a long way, I think.
Yeah. Yeah, and I have another quick one here. We were asked, are internships only for college students, or do you have college grads programs for internships as well? So I would let you know that our internships have been for people at a variety of levels. Usually, folks who have, at least on the engineering side, who have been in some sort of school situation. But I think we would take hobbyists as well. It's typically been for sophomores, juniors, and seniors, and then we have had a few people who just graduated who then joined the program too. So I think the thing that we find with folks who had recently graduated is they're looking for full-time roles, and so they don't often or always personally want the internship. But if we're where you want to be, we're not one shoe fits all. We're not like one box. So if you're interested and open to our internship programs, then I would say that we would do what we can to find a fit for you. And then another one that I think that we can talk about here is, what should a gameplay animator have on their reel to stand out for recruiters for character animation roles at Iron Galaxy? So one thing I wanted to highlight real quick is, I know that we might think this is irritating, but when there's a trailer before the trailer where they kind of give you like a few flashy moments about what you're going to see in this next 2 minutes, that first 10 seconds, I do think that that's helpful as a tactic on your reel to have kind of just a mix of the different varieties you might show us in your 1 minute, 1 minute and a half, 2 minute segment. Because I often find that people put the best thing or the thing that I really want to see in their reel at the end. And it's this thing where I'm like, please lead with your meal first. Don't give me nachos and mozzarella. I don't want appetizers. I want you to lead with your meal first and give me that protein up front. And so hit them with the thing that is most relevant, most recent, and you're most proud of up front in your reel. That's where you start. Also, in the same way of where people's like, I'm not going to read all that, right? Like you need to, like, you can speed up certain segments to shorten the video. Because if you hit someone with a 5 minute reel, at some point they could lose that attention span, right? There's people behind these processes. So you gotta kind of engineer that reel, I think, in a way to kind of excite and get that excitement. So if there is that 10-second clip of like, oh, these are the things you're going to see, right? They might be like, oh, hey, this is their dragon and this is their robot mech and this is that, like, they might be like, oh yeah, I wanted to see that ogre that they had. So they're going to stay around for the journey to see that ogre at the end of it. So that's what I had for that one. Let's see here. All right, I want to just ask the panel and then I'll give the recruiter answer. Should you have your picture on your resume?
I mean,
I don't have
I
enough space, so I'm gonna say no for
I
me
don't
because I need
personally
a space.
like, I don't care as long as the other information that's there is pertinent and like complete. But I will tell you that if your face is on your resume, it's gonna look weird. Like I looked at a lot of resumes and ain't that many faces on them. So
Yeah.
like prepare to be like the different person who's putting their face on their
Yeah,
resume.
I mean, maybe it'll help you stand out, who
Maybe.
knows? But yeah, like
mean,
I'm with Joe, like I haven't really seen that many. I've seen a couple, but like I don't think it'll help or hurt you. I mean, it's just kind of a personal preference, I guess.
And I'll give you the recruiter's perspective. So one, my face is on my resume, but that's because I was going for community management roles and public facing roles. So I wanted them to know who they'd be seeing, right? Or who would be the face of their brand or company, right? So that's why I did it. It was purposeful. But I will tell you, across the board, recruiters tell me you should not put your photo on your resume. There can be unconscious bias, and it cannot have anything to do with race or ethnicity or cultural background. It can have everything to do with, they don't like the color red and your shirt's red, right? So there are these things that you have no idea could be someone's pet peeve, or they're like, why aren't they wearing a suit or a button up, right? Like
Yeah.
my resume just has to be like a Reebok zip up jacket that I love. So right, so like that's the thing, that it can unlock unconscious bias. So I would say across the board, recruiters tell me no. But again, Rejess said there's no rules. So if you think that it's the way to show off your true authentic self, I think that you should do it too, because I have it on mine and recruiters tell me that's bad. But here I am with the job. So I don't know. I don't know what's going on there. Okay, this is a good one. Do all the offices in the different cities work on games together, or are they separate? So are our game projects siloed to any one location?
Typically, no. I think, we're all just a pool of employees for Iron Galaxy, and they just pull us as we're needed. Um, that isn't to say that like sometimes a whole project might end up being in a certain place, but that would just be by happenstance. That wouldn't be like by design or anything.
Mhm.
Like I've been in positions where I'm like the only Chicago employee on a project or on my direct team. So like I'm the lead of the UI engineers, and all my engineers are working out of Orlando, but I'm in Chicago. But like it doesn't really matter, you know what I'm saying? So like it just happens by coincidence sometimes. It's not the way we design anything.
Yeah, like my current project, we have people in all 3 studios. We're in Orlando, Chicago, and Nashville right now. So yeah.
Worldwide. Ooh, 10. Ooh, 10.
It's amazing.
That's enough of that.
All right. Last question that we could wrap up on today. What does the day in the life look like for a producer at Iron Galaxy? And then we can do day in the life for each person. Archie, do
Well,
you want to start?
yeah, so day in the life, basically like some of the things that we do over the course of the day are, scheduling. We'll do meetings and make sure that, we'll align with our partners and make sure that, we're all on the same page. There's so many different things. A lot of it, I'll be perfectly honest, a lot of production is ad hoc. So there's a lot of things that'll just come up over the course of the day. Like you can have a set plan of what you want to do in that day, but there'll be so many things that'll come up that'll kind of like divert your attention that you may not get to all of those things. Some of those things might have to wait till tomorrow. But you basically have to be super flexible when it comes to production. Because like I said, some of these problems may come up where like someone's facing a technical issue, or like, somebody misinterpreted something that somebody else said about what they should do. And so they have to be like kind of brought back to speed on what they should be doing, or, like you need to get somebody spun up on, a new technical aspect of the project that just came online, and so there's so many different things. You just have to be like kind of ready for everything. I'll say.
Joe, do you have day in the life for us? I know we've gone long, but do you have day in the life info to share?
I mean, usually it starts with like a stand up. When I was on Rumbleverse, we do triage first. So we look at any new bugs that have popped up based on new features and things of that nature. Then we'd triage those bugs to different team members. And then you do stand up and you'd have everybody, we'd either like go over our JIRAs, which is like our bug reporting and task database. And we kind of go through everybody and see what they're working on, if they're blocked, what they need help with, things of that nature. And then you might, work on a feature. Maybe you like if you're like me and you have reports, you might do a one-on-one. You might go back to working on some more features, and maybe have some other meetings. And then you're coding some feature, you're fixing some bugs, and then the day is over. It's just a mix of like meeting responsibilities and for some of us we have mentoring responsibilities, and then just doing your hands-on keyboard work.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, I think we should wrap here. But what I will say, Rejess, if you want to give your quick day in life, I'll give my day in life. My day in the life is this: making events so that people can meet our dev teams and learn things. Rejess, is that also yours?
Yeah, no day is the same for me. No day is the same.
Cool. And I wanted to give a shout out to Rick for helping us with the tech here. I also wanted to announce, without Rejess's knowledge, that we will be doing more of these type of press start sessions throughout the year. So if you did not get your question answered, feel free to reach out to me or Rick on LinkedIn, Rick Martinez or Elijah Montoya. We're happy to help you and assist you. And then there will be more of these sessions coming in the coming months. So we'll address your questions then. Come on back. We'll have different team members joining. And we're excited that you registered to hear about Iron Galaxy, and we really thank you for your time, energy, and effort today. Get those jobs and games. We're here to support you. Thanks, Joe. Thanks, Archie. Thanks, Rejess. Thank you all for being here. You guys have a great day.
Hi, everyone.